I was very much aware of it. I watched it when it first came out. I had relatively low expectations. I did not know much about it, except I was a Keanu fan like everyone else. I sat in the theater. I watched a movie that did not have the principal speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and I was in awe. It was revelatory insofar as it reminded me that movies are about things that happen, not things that are said. So I have been very, very aware of this franchise. I have studied it quite a lot. It's a franchise that understands that the questions are more interesting than the answers because it treats me and the viewer like an adult. It doesn't spoon feed me information. It assumes that I'm a thinking human being. And the obvious dedication to craft and the uncompromising nature of this group of filmmakers makes it very noteworthy. It was quite eye-opening and quite remarkable, and I really was not prepared for it. I come from a world where you meet with your producer, your director, for a few hours, you go home, you write a draft, you come back, you do notes. I had in Los Angeles maybe a dozen meetings with Keanu and Chad. I don't think one of them went for less than 9 hours. These guys make you raise your game, and they lead from the front. I've never seen two human beings work harder or longer on a project, and it shows. I mean, it is physically, emotionally, and mentally and possibly spiritually draining. Two things. One is not be repetitive. Two was honor the character. Three was honor the world. And four was give the audiences a little bit more. What the marching orders were from the very first meetings, it became very plain that they needed to expand this universe slightly. The three movies had been squarely on John Wick. And from the beginning, they knew that they wanted to create a film that showcased other characters and through those characters showcased the world. But they wanted to give the audience what the audience wanted, which is more. We were fascinated by Karen. We were very, very lucky to get Rena. She was absolutely fantastic. And this is a young woman who has never actually acted, to my knowledge. She owned it in dialogue, through emotion, and in action. She's a lovely character. She's also a very tragic character. We wanted to show the world on multiple temporal levels. People sort of like coming into this world, people already in this world, people at the top of their game or trying to get out of this world. She represented someone on the younger side, next generation, if you will. And we wanted to create a somewhat complicated relationship between her and her father. Her father loves her very much. She is a part of this world, but he doesn't really want her to be a part of this world. We also wanted to use her to demonstrate that once you dip your toe into this world, it will grab you and pull you in. There is no escaping this world. And that obviously was a theme. It's a theme of the John Wick franchise. It's like, how do you get out? And all of us were excited about writing and creating a part for a young woman that would give us a different view into this world. In 3, we had the adjudicator. The adjudicator was an official that came to correct some wrongs, to set things right. That didn't go so well. When we meet the Marquis, he is akin to the sheriff of this world. This is a man of great ambition. He's a man of tremendous power. He's something of a sadist. He's also a very powerful spokesman for what the table is and why John Wick has to die. The interesting thing about him, for me, is that he is a villain who believes he is the hero of his own story. He is doing God's work. He's on the side of right. John Wick is on the side of wrong. That's up for interpretation. I think that some of us might disagree with that. When we designed this piece, we wanted to have a view of John, essentially a timeline of John's life, and demonstrate possibilities of what could have occurred if he had made certain choices. Cain represents the choice of, if John Wick had taken the Elder's deal from 3 and killed Winston, he would have been Cain. He would have been locked into the service of the table, and he would have gone through life, and his soul would have slowly sort of collapsed, essentially, whichever word. The tracker is someone coming in from the bottom, and he has the potential to either go one way or the other. He can either follow sort of the path of Cain, he can follow the path of John, he can take his own path. He's a man who's getting in to get out. He's a guy who has sort of figured out before this movie starts that he wants out. And he's willing to do almost anything to get out, including make a deal with the table. Now, what he doesn't understand, and what Cain and John understand, is you can't make a deal with the table. The table is like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out. He is the harbinger. He's the harbinger of death. He's a man, when he walks in, bad things happen. You do not want the Harbinger knocking on your door. He represents the table. He sits in an odd way, like the elder sat above the table. He is the head of the bureaucracy, in a sense, that exists regardless of leadership. The world of the table is quite ceremonial. There are rules, there are consequences, there are rituals. Chad and Keanu are always talking about the rituals. All, by the way, designed to indicate that this has been going on for a very long time. The Harbinger is a sort of representative of the history of the table. A neutral arbiter, largely, but incredibly dangerous. He comes whenever things have gone askew. This is a man who sort of institutionally writes the boat, the entire sort of body of this. And he has tremendous knowledge of the history of the table and all the players. In a weird way, he plays, he's a little bit of the devil. He tempts, he creates problems. He loves life. He's the character who most embraces the world of Wick. This is a man who absolutely opens his arms and draws it all in. And there's something so honest and open and fun and grand and large and mischievous about him that you can't help but love him. Also, when Lawrence Fishburne looks at the camera and smiles and that baritone comes out, it's pretty compelling. When we last left in 3, John had been shot off a roof. He'd been betrayed by Winston, and he's picked up by the Bowery King. The last lines of 3, the Bowery King asks him, "Are you mad?" And, "Oh, yeah." And what John Wick does in 4 is an expression of that. 1 was the introduction of John Wick in this world. 2 was the consequences of re-entering. 3 was John Wick being hunted for making a moral choice. Now, the moral choice involved violence, but he did what he and we believe is the right thing. And for that, he was hunted. He was on his heels the entire piece. We wanted in 4 to flip the paradigm and have the Baba Yaga go after the table. Essentially, 4 is the story of John saying, "I am not going to run anymore." So instead of running from the table, he turns around and runs at them. And we start to understand actually why people are so afraid of John Wick. Keanu has the courage to not speak. In a world where we're bombarded with noise, with information, he has perfected a look, a posture, a stance that is incredibly powerful, and he is not afraid of long, uncomfortable silences. And I think that right there is, for me, the single most sort of interesting thing about him. Then, of course, obviously he's a trained, very fine actor. He can deliver lines. But one thing about him is his work ethic. This is a man who will train a year on this. I mean, people don't know this. These amazing stunts, these incredible sort of action sequences, these incredible driving sequences, you think, and you would probably be right in most instances, think that those are stunt guys. Most of that is Keanu, and they're hard. I mean, these sequences he puts together and Chad puts together for him, these don't just happen. These are months and months and years of training go into them.